After donating my inheritance to help my wife start her nonprofit, I discovered she was pocketing donations with her partner, the same man she swore was just helping. When I confronted her, she said, "No one cares about the details." I sent every receipt and message to the local news station, and watched as her name was dragged across every TV in town. My name's Adam. I'm 44 and I live in Asheville, North Carolina. I used to believe in giving people the benefit of the doubt. I thought if someone you love has a dream, you help them chase it. I thought if you do the right thing, good things come back to you. But all that fell apart after what my wife did. In 2021, my dad passed away. He wasn't rich, but he'd worked hard and lived simple. He left me around $180,000. That money meant something to me, not just because it was a lot, but because it was from him. He'd saved it for years. I wanted to do something smart with it. My wife, Natalie, had other ideas. We'd been married 6 years at that point. She worked part-time at a community center and always talked about wanting to make a bigger impact. We could do so much more, she'd say. If only we had the money. When the inheritance came, she pushed hard to start her own nonprofit. She said she wanted to help at-risk youth, kids aging out of the system, kids without support. I believed her. I thought it was a good thing to do. So I gave her $150,000 to start it. I thought we were building something together. We called it Future Forward. I helped set up the website, filed the paperwork, even painted the walls of the small office space we rented downtown. I worked full-time in logistics, but I gave her every evening and weekend I could. We printed flyers, went to community events, tried to build support. I saw it as our thing. A few weeks in, she introduced me to Derek. She said he was an old friend who used to run programs for troubled youth. She said he believed in the mission and wanted to help. He's just helping out, she said. He knows how this stuff works. He looked like a guy who always knew more than he said. Smiled too much. Wore those glasses people only wear for style. Something about him rubbed me the wrong way from the start. He called me man too often. But I didn't want to be that husband, the suspicious one who chases off every guy who works with his wife. So I shut up. Over the next few months, I started seeing less and less of Natalie. She was always in meetings, traveling to meet donors, or working late with Derek. I'd ask questions, and she'd brush me off. We're working on a pilot program in Hendersonville. I have to meet with the city rep in Hickory. It's complicated. You wouldn't understand all the red tape. I let it slide, thinking I was just out of my depth. But I started noticing weird things. She'd come home in expensive clothes I hadn't seen before. One night, she had a designer bag she claimed was a gift from a donor. Another time, I saw a transaction on our joint account, $200 for what she said was office supplies. I asked her for the books once, just to see how things were going. She laughed and said, "I don't want you stressing about numbers. You said you didn't want to deal with the business side." Then came the night that changed everything. I got home early from work. Walked in and heard laughter from the living room. Natalie and Derek were sitting close on the couch, wine glasses on the table, soft music playing. They weren't talking about work. They weren't looking at papers. She jumped up when she saw me. Her face froze. "Oh. We were just going over some mentoring data," she said. Derek raised his glass. "We just landed a big donor. Celebrating a little." I said nothing. Just nodded and walked past them. That night, while she slept, I opened her laptop. She always left it open on the kitchen counter. That's when I found the other spreadsheet. Hidden in a folder marked Miscellaneous, it was titled Private Donor Allocations. I clicked it. My heart dropped. Line after line of transfers to unknown accounts. $3,500 to Field Consultant DL every month. $7,000 for consulting fees, $2,200 for personal wellness. Another line said Team Retreat, Bahamas. None of this had anything to do with helping kids. Then I opened her messages with Derek. I shouldn't have, but I had to know. They joked about dumb donors. She wrote, even Adam still believes this is about helping kids. LOL. Another text from Derek said, he's funding the scam and he doesn't even know it. I sat there for hours. My hands shook. My jaw clenched so tight it hurt. The next morning, I asked her flat out. What is this? You and Derek? The money? She looked me dead in the eye and said, no one cares about the details, Adam. People give money to feel good. Nobody checks where it goes. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just walked out. I got in my truck and drove. For 3 hours, I drove around town thinking about every moment I believed in her, every hour I gave, every dollar I spent. Then I made copies of everything. Every spreadsheet. Every message. Every bank transfer. I sent them to News 13, our local station. I sent them to the Citizen Times. I sent them to every local Facebook group connected to nonprofits. And I waited. 2 days later, it hit the news. Local nonprofit under fire for financial misconduct. Natalie's face was on the screen. Her press photo, now with a headline that might as well have been a warrant. The donors pulled out. The office shut down. The bank account froze. State investigators came knocking. Derek disappeared. She tried to say it was all a misunderstanding. She even called me, crying. I didn't pick up. I filed for divorce. I gave the court everything I had. Every document. Every email. Every lie. I don't know if she'll go to jail, but I know this, she'll never show her face in this town again without someone remembering her as the woman who stole money from kids and got caught. After the story broke, it spread like wildfire. Not just locally, regional stations picked it up too. People shared it all over Facebook and Twitter. Former donors posted angry comments. Parents of kids they claimed to help demanded answers. Natalie's name was poisoned in a matter of days. But the fallout hit harder than I expected. About a week after the news broke, I got a knock on my door. It was a man in a cheap suit with a state badge. We need to ask you some questions, he said. About your role in Future Forward. I let him in. My heart was racing. I had done everything I could to stay out of the actual money stuff, but my name was still on some of the startup paperwork. I had signed a few things early on. I hadn't touched a dollar, but legally, I had been listed as a founding officer. He showed me a few documents, including one I didn't remember signing. A release for a consultant contract. Derek's name was on it. That's not mine, I said. I never signed that. He nodded slowly. Well, it has your name on it. And the signature matches the others. My stomach dropped. Natalie had forged my name. She faked my signature to make it look like I approved of all the payments. The agent said the investigation was still early, but they were looking at possible fraud, tax evasion, and misappropriation of charitable funds. You're not being charged, he said. But you might be called in as a witness. Or worse, if more documents surface. I spent the next 3 days pulling every file I had. I hired a lawyer with the last of my savings. I gave him everything. Every original doc, every email I had sent asking about the finances, every time I'd asked for transparency and was shut down. He said it helped, but he didn't look confident. That same week, my boss called me into his office. Adam, I don't know what's going on in your personal life, but this situation with your wife is getting a lot of attention. Our clients are asking questions. I tried to explain that I wasn't involved. That I had exposed her. He looked uncomfortable. I know, and I believe you. But the optics are rough. We're going to have to let you go. Just like that, I lost my job. I came home that night and sat in the dark. My house felt cold, like all the warmth had been drained out of it. The walls still had her stupid inspirational quotes in frames: believe in good, do the right thing. I ripped them off one by one and threw them in the trash. The next twist came 2 weeks later. A young woman named Jessica emailed me. She said she was a former volunteer at Future Forward and had left after a few months because things felt wrong. She attached several emails where Natalie had coached her to lie to donors. She told us to say we had 50 teens enrolled when we only had 6, she wrote. She said, it's not really lying if the money helps the mission. Jessica said she'd been scared to speak out but now felt like she needed to. I gave everything to my lawyer. The next day, I got a message from an unknown number. It was Derek. Real nice, Adam. You couldn't just walk away. You had to torch the whole thing. You don't even know what you've done. I stared at the message. I wanted to reply. I wanted to say a lot of things. But I didn't. Instead, I forwarded it to the investigator. A few days later, my lawyer told me something strange: Derek had a sealed record. Something shady in another state, possibly misused funds at another nonprofit. But no conviction. Just a quiet settlement and a disappearing act. And now he was on the move again. Natalie? She went quiet. Her number stopped working. Her lawyer started speaking for her. They tried to blame it all on poor management, said the whole situation had been misunderstood, and pushed back on the investigation. But then another donor came forward. A big one. She showed proof of a $25,000 donation Natalie had promised to use for youth housing. Instead, Natalie used it to rent a condo in Charlotte, where she and Derek had business meetings for weeks at a time. And the story wasn't over yet. Because I was starting to wonder, what if Natalie had done this before? What if I wasn't the first idiot who funded her little scams? After the condo in Charlotte came to light, things escalated fast. The donor who exposed that lie, her name was Margot, older woman, retired school principal. She told the press she had given that money because Natalie cried during their meeting. Told her a story about a teenage girl who had nowhere to go after foster care, sleeping in her car, begging for a second chance. That girl doesn't exist, Margot said on the news, shaking her head. I checked. There's no such client in any of their files. And Margot wasn't the only one. More donors came out of the woodwork, each with a different story Natalie had told them. A teen with leukemia. A single mom in rehab. A GED program for young fathers. All made up. Meanwhile, my lawyer kept digging. He subpoenaed Natalie's credit card records. That's when I learned she had been flying to New Orleans every few months, alone. Sometimes with Derek, sometimes without. Each trip lined up perfectly with large donations from private fundraisers. That part hurt more than I expected. Not just the betrayal, but how well she had lied. She had cried to me once, saying she was burned out from the work, that she needed a mental reset retreat. I let her go, even paid for one of those trips. I thought I was being supportive. Turns out, I was funding a damn vacation. But the biggest blow came when my lawyer uncovered a wire transfer from my inheritance account, one I hadn't touched in months. Somehow, $12,000 had been moved out without my permission. When I confronted the bank, they showed me the authorization form. The signature looked like mine. But it wasn't. Natalie had forged my name again. Used her access while we were still together. Took that money and sent it to an LLC registered under Everett Solutions. A shell company. Guess who was listed as the sole owner? Derek Langston. Derek freaking Langston. That's when I lost it. I went to the police. They told me the bank fraud case could be separate from the nonprofit investigation, but they needed more proof. I started going through everything. Not just my stuff, her old files, her social media, old phones she left behind. One of them still had an old iCloud backup. I cracked into it. That's when I found something I wasn't supposed to see. Natalie had been married before. Not just a short college thing, she had been married to a man in Ohio named Brent Keller. I searched his name and found a single line in a local paper: local woman investigated for misappropriating funds at youth center, case dismissed after divorce proceedings. It was Natalie. She had changed her last name. She left that town, divorced Brent, and started fresh down here. Same playbook. And Brent? I found him on Facebook. Reached out. Told him who I was. He called me 2 days later. Voice shaking. He said, "You're the second man she used like that. She did it to me too. She cleaned out my savings, then blamed me when it all crashed." I asked why he never pressed charges. "I didn't have the strength," he said. "She had me believing it was my fault." That's when I realized this wasn't just about fraud. This was a pattern. She targeted men, used them for startup money, built trust, built a brand, and when it crumbled, she vanished. But this time, I wasn't letting her disappear. And I wasn't done. Because I'd just found something else: a quiet real estate listing in Nashville. A small commercial space rented under the name New Start Youth Initiative. The contact listed was N. Everett. Natalie was already starting again. Once I found that listing in Nashville, I knew exactly what she was doing. Same script, different city. A fresh name, a new set of lies. She thought she could outrun the damage, start another scam while everyone back in Asheville was still picking up the pieces. I drove to Nashville. I didn't tell my lawyer. I didn't tell anyone. I packed a bag, printed out every file, and drove 5 hours straight, running on anger and gas station coffee. The building was nothing special. Just a gray storefront with New Start Youth Initiative written in cheap vinyl letters on the window. But when I walked inside, it felt like I'd stepped into a theater set. All show, nothing real. There were a few fake certificates on the wall, a coffee machine that looked untouched, and a woman at the desk who didn't even know what the nonprofit claimed to do. "I just answer phones," she said. "Miss Everett handles the programs." Miss Everett. Natalie. She wasn't there that day. But she had an open house event scheduled for the next afternoon, a networking mixer for local partners. I told the woman I was with a donor foundation and wanted to stop by. She smiled and said Natalie would be thrilled. I checked into a cheap motel that night and didn't sleep. My mind ran wild. Every word she ever said to me felt fake. Every moment of trust, every look, every kiss, it all turned rotten. But I also kept thinking about what I'd done wrong. I gave her everything and asked no questions. I believed her because it felt good to believe. I let myself be fooled. The next day, I showed up early and waited across the street. I watched as people arrived, local business owners, nonprofit reps, even a few college students. Natalie showed up right at 5. Dressed sharp, smiling, shaking hands like a damn politician. Like she hadn't burned her whole life to the ground. I waited until the room was full, then walked in with a manila folder in my hand. When she saw me, her smile dropped. Her whole body stiffened. She looked at me like she'd seen a ghost. "Adam," she said quietly, stepping toward me. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer. I turned to the crowd and raised my voice. Hi, folks. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to let you know who you're working with here. She tried to grab my arm. Don't do this, I pulled free. Her real name is Natalie Langston. Used to be Keller. She's under investigation in North Carolina for fraud, theft, and forgery. This nonprofit? It's a front. Just like the last one. Just like the one before that. Gasps. Confused looks. I opened the folder and started passing out documents, news clippings, financial records, her fake LLC tied to Derek. I had copies of her forged signature on my bank withdrawal form. I even had Brent's statement in writing. Natalie's face drained of all color. She grabbed at papers, tried to explain, but nobody was listening. This is harassment, she said, voice shaking. He's my ex. He's trying to ruin me. No, I said. You did that yourself. I walked out as people started whispering, backing away from her, checking their phones. I could already see someone filming. By the time I got back to Asheville, the video had gone viral in a local Nashville Facebook group. It got picked up by a Nashville news outlet the next morning. And once the story connected to the one in Asheville, it was over. 2 days later, she was arrested. They charged her with wire fraud, forging legal documents, and misusing charitable funds. Derek was tracked down in Texas and brought in too. Turns out there was an old warrant under one of his alias names. Natalie tried to claim mental instability, but it didn't hold. Too much evidence. Too many victims. She got sentenced to 5 years. Derek got 3. I lost my inheritance. My marriage. My job. But I got something better, the truth out in the open. Her lies exposed. Her name destroyed. The future she thought she could build off people's pain, gone. As for me, I moved out of Asheville. Started fresh in Knoxville. Took a warehouse job to stay busy. No dating. No causes. Just quiet. Sometimes I still think about that moment in the room, when her smile broke and she knew it was over. And I remember what she said to me when I first confronted her. No one cares about the details. Well, I made damn sure everyone did.